Sometimes when children suddenly stop eating something that they used to like, you want to pay attention. So if it lasts for a long time, that's another clue for us to be curious and to look under the surface. What has happened maybe in those past couple weeks? Was there a stressful move, transition, new school? All these things can really impact.
This podcast shares personal stories and professional insights, but it's not a substitute for medical advice or therapy. If you're looking for support, do speak to someone qualified and trained in child development or special needs care. You'll find the full disclaimer on the screen and in the show note.
Welcome to another episode of Adapting Together podcast. My name is Sinyi, and together with me today, we have two amazing co-hosts, Kaveen and Carmen. We are a podcast to empower, support, and inspire parents and caregivers with neurodivergent children. Right. Today, we're going to talk about feeding and nutrition, which is a topic that many families finds it stressful. Parents might have children who refuses to eat, for example, only eat food of a certain texture,
kind, yeah.
certain kinds.
We need to breathe and eat every day, and when our child don't eat, then to the parents, what am I going to do? Is like the end of the world kind of thing, and then we will try our best to either convince them to eat or try to make them want the food attractive enough for the child to accept. But certain time, for my own experience throughout the last 3 years, we have a lot of up and down when it comes to eating, and it's not easy. Sometimes really stress the parents, left, right, center.
If you also felt like eating is a daily battle, I think this episode is really for you. We are very honored to have a registered dietitian and also the co-founder of Fat to Flourish with us today, Janice. Thank you for agreeing to be our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you share with our audience a little bit of your professional background?
Sure, yeah. I worked as a registered dietitian. I'm actually from California, USA. So I worked there for about 10 years before I became a mom. And then a few years ago, we've been in Malaysia for like 4 years now. And so during that season when I was parenting, I experienced a different side of feeding and nutrition compared to my professional side. And so that's really when I got into supporting families, and that's what we're here to do today.
Right. Can you share with our listeners what your role as a dietitian looks like?
Yeah, so my role as a dietitian has really evolved over the years, and a lot of that is because recently, in the past decade or so, we've just had a lot more research done on pediatric feeding disorders, ARFID, as well as neurodiversity and autism and trauma, and how all of these different things can impact eating. And so my role is to help kids and their families move toward that connected mealtime, which means kids and their families can have calm, safe, enjoyable meal times, which can feel very far for kids and families with feeding challenges. And so we really have to take a more holistic perspective and approach to addressing these feeding challenges. We can't just focus on the food and the nutrition. We have to look at all the different factors that impact eating. And so I've been really blessed to work with some amazing speech therapists, both on our team as well as internationally, who've been working with kids with feeding challenges for a while. And so getting that holistic, multidisciplinary approach to feeding is really helpful. Occupational therapists and clinical psychologists can really add a lot of input into these cases as well.
It's a very important thing. Music to my ears.
Yeah.
We may have this perception that as an Asian, we eat rice is our main staple food. So when my son stopped taking rice, to us it's like, something is not right, and we have to immediately find a solution because he cannot not eat rice. I eat rice most of the time, especially dinner. So when he don't take that, it becomes like, a cause for panic, and it stresses out. Yeah. And I think I'm not the only parents who went through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, in what way does the food we feed our children or food affect them and their autism? So,
Yeah. Food eating, can definitely impact their mood, which impacts their behavior, and that can be really challenging. I think there's also a lot of theories and opinions out there about how, specific foods and specific nutrients can impact autism. And we have to really listen to that with kind of a critical eye, not taking everything we hear as facts, and also stay open-minded. So, because research is always changing, recommendations are always changing. And so we kind of have to be a little bit open-minded and critical in what we listen to. But the things that we do know is that everyone needs to eat. Autistic or neurotypical, everyone needs that nutrition. We know that to be true. And we also know that kids with autism can be at a higher risk or tend to have more feeding challenges than a neurotypical child. So how do we take those two things and make them work together? And that's going to be a balance that we have to find, that's going to be very unique to each family and each individual.
So based on your experience working with parents all these years, what would be the common misconception that parents can learn about feeding and nutrition?
Yeah, parents, it's very easy for us to get stuck on eating rice. Yes. We see the behavior, and if we're familiar with that iceberg analogy, we see the tip of the iceberg. The child's not eating, and we need them to eat. But a lot of times, parents aren't seeing all the things that are happening under the surface of the water. So all the things that lead to these feeding challenges. It could be maybe they don't have those oral motor skills to chew the food, or it could be sensory issues that are making it hard for them to tolerate different textures, different smells. It could be even stress and anxiety that impact how they eat, and impact their appetite and their digestion. So we have to look at all the things that are happening underneath the surface. And those behaviors, the picky eating that we focus on, is a clue to help us pause and be curious about what's going on. If we just look at what's happening on the surface and we don't think about all the things, then we could end up with a bigger problem.
will be every day will be a battle, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's very important that yes, we see, like you say, the iceberg is actually not eating, and our target is making them to eat. But what is the fundamental, the core issue could be like you say, sensory, could be due to texture, could be due to just mood and all this thing, right? Yeah. So I think, as a parent, has to be like a detective. As I always tell parents, be a detective to find out more what is the core issue in order to achieve what we want them to achieve. Yeah.
I mean, if we just look at the surface, which is the behavior of not eating, sometimes his parents also at risk of making conclusion that the child is not cooperating, naughty, you don't listen to instruction, and we miss out to really understand what's going on. So I guess what you said is we also need to be curious and seek first to understand what actually caused this behavior instead of trying to correct the behavior itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy and it takes time.
And patience.
Yes, a lot of patience.
What age should the parents start paying closer attention to feeding patterns?
Yeah, I would say at birth. As early as possible, when you start noticing something, that's a clue that something's not working as it should. Babies, even before they're born, are making those neural connections in their brain between the act of eating, so sucking and swallowing, even before they're born. They're sucking their thumb in the mom's tummy, they're swallowing the amniotic fluid, and they're making that connection with the feeling of being safe and comforted in the mom's womb. When they're born, you put them to the breast, they're sucking, they're swallowing, they're learning to eat, and they're making that connection between the act of eating and being held and safe in mom's arms. But when there's like some medical conditions, maybe they're born early, they're staying in the NICU, they have tubes going down their throat, or they're getting poked and pricked for tests, mom's not always available, so they might have those associations of being fed, and maybe they're not even ready to be fed orally, so they're choking. So they're making those associations with the feeling of being uncomfortable, in pain. Yeah.
So it might affect the later on when
yes.
we are trying to feed him.
Yeah, it can. It can definitely lead to oral aversions. And so whenever you start noticing, that's the moment to start being curious and start trying to create more positive associations with eating. The good news is that at any age, your brain is neuroplastic. So you can, at any age, whether they're toddlers or older kids, you can start making those positive associations. So that's the hopeful part of it.
As young as they are just born as an infant, how do parents try to observe or notice that some signs that need attention?
That's really important. You want to pay attention to their hunger and fullness cues. Sometimes parents get really stuck on, they have to finish this bottle, but the baby's like pushing it away. And so you know that they don't want it. Maybe either they're full, or maybe it's uncomfortable for them. Maybe the flow is too fast and they're getting too much so they can't breathe. So those are all signs that we have to pay attention to. And you know, sometimes parents will do everything to just get the milk into their mouth.
Thinking that is the right thing to do, of course.
Yes, because that's what they know. It's natural. Like their job is to feed the baby. But when we miss all these clues, then that can lead to, you know, different problems.
To say that for babies who are on breastfeeding, is less chances of these kind of being made to finish the meal, because we were taught that when the baby is full, they will just naturally detach or just push away. So we know that, okay, it's finished already, full already.
Yeah, breastfeeding is can be a lot easier to kind of tune into their cues because of the way our body's created. Like that's the natural way. Even the flow of the milk that comes out is tailored to, you know, what the baby needs. Even the content, the nutritional content of the milk is tailored to what the child needs. So it's really amazing. Yeah.
Thanks, Janice, for telling us so much more from born, right, the baby. So I'm also curious about when they start to grow up, like becoming a toddler. What are some of the signs then for a toddler that you would suggest the parents to start seeing a dietitian or to do a nutrition assessment when they have detected all these signs?
I would say if they're eating less than 15 different foods, that's a sign that
1-5?
Yeah, 15 different types of foods. That's just kind of like an
idea, a rough idea.
Yeah. Also, if they tend to avoid like certain textures, they only eat blended food, that's also something to pay attention to. Or if they only eat, you know, certain, you know, avoid all meats, then those are things that can give us a clue. Also, you know, if they're not growing well, if they're not gaining weight over a period of time, that's also a flag that something might be, yeah.
So the number of food they take and their growth path, anything else?
The types of foods that they're eating. You can kind of look at their physical, like, are they very lethargic? Do they have enough energy for the day? Sometimes their physical features like hair, nails, skin can be clues.
Yellowish.
Yeah, of nutritional deficiencies. Yeah.
When you say 15 types of foods, right, does the kind of like a junk food kind of thing, snacks, all counts?
I would count that. Yes, I would count that.
Different brand you count.
I mean, like, you think of potatoes, you have French fries, potato chips, mashed potatoes. would count that as different
Wow.
things. Yeah.
More than 50 times.
Yeah, they're very different.
I see. So for parents who meet you for the first time, what could they expect in the initial session?
Yeah, so I first start with an intake. Would want them to fill out a form if they can. And then when they come in, then I talk with them. We have an interview. I really want to get to know what are their concerns, what is the child struggling with, and also what does their day look like? What does the child's day look like from the morning to nighttime when they go to sleep? What are they eating? And how are they eating it? Do they eat with the helper, by themselves? Are they eating with the family? Are they eating in school? So I want to know all these different things. How are they sleeping? Are they toileting normally? All these different things that can impact how they eat. So I want to get a pretty good idea of that. So that's a big part of it. Also, getting to know the child. So building that trust with the child is really important, especially on the first visit. I want them to know that this place is safe and comfortable so that they're not dysregulated when they come, so that they're not scared when they're coming. And that will really impact therapy, ongoing therapy. Because when they're comfortable and regulated, that's when they can learn and grow. And then also I want to observe. So I ask parents to bring some foods that the child likes to eat so that I can see them eating. I watch how they're chewing the food, how they're swallowing. Is it, spilling out of their mouth, or does the child have a really hard time with anything touching their face? So those are some clues that help me figure out what is the thing under the surface that is causing it to be hard for the child to eat.
Very interesting. I'm trying to process. It's quite a lot of things that you need to notice during that period of time, and we know that if a child on the spectrum first time coming, definitely that's quite challenging sometimes. They'll be they don't have a rapport with you, and yet you have to do quite a number of things to
And sometimes it
build
doesn't
them.
always happen on the first visit.
It has to be a few.
Sometimes it takes time to discover. It depends on the child.
Okay.
But I was thinking what you said just now is really very holistic, because you try to really not just looking at what they eat now, but you also want to understand the day-to-day activities, what they do. So there's a lot of things that really very holistically understanding the whole family, their lifestyle and whatnot, which I suppose can give you a lot of insights and cue about why certain thing happens, which really go underneath the iceberg to check all the possible causes.
Sometimes parents just want the child to eat, but we have to understand that there's so much more that goes into it.
Janice, I was also wondering, for all the things you do during the first intake session, usually how long the sessions will be? 90 minutes or 60 minutes?
Oh, our first intake session will be 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, Janice. For new parents who just receive a diagnosis, what are the first nutritionally priorities that they should focus on?
Yeah, so it really depends, because not all kids with autism have feeding challenges. So we really want to look at, does this child have a risk for nutritional deficiency? And so if they do have feeding challenges, then we want to identify what are the nutritional deficiencies that they might be at risk for, and how can we address that? And so that looks different for every child. We want to be able to address it in a way that feels comfortable and safe and tolerable for the child. So if they're not eating meat, how can we make sure that they're getting the protein that they need? Are there other things that they are able to tolerate, that they're willing to take, that can provide that protein? So addressing those nutritional deficiencies in a way that feels comfortable, in a way that can let mealtimes still be positive, not stressful. That's really important. Eating is such a social thing, especially in Malaysian culture, right? And so we want, for our kids with autism, that can look different. That social aspect can look different when it comes to eating as well. But how can they feel comfortable? How can eating be enjoyable for them. And for some kids, they may have that sensitivity to sound. They may not be able to tolerate the sound of someone else eating next to them. So maybe for them, you can have them eat with you, but you're not really eating with them. And so that's one way to kind of adapt and adjust for their individual needs.
I believe a lot of our listeners would like to know like whether their children really need to eat veggie or fruits, because this is something that I always encounter when parents always come and tell us, come on, you know, my child is not eating veggie, is not eating fruits. But in my mind, it's like there's so many people that's not eating vegetable and fruits, and yet they are growing well. Just would like to hear from you know. So what is your comment? And yes.
Yes, you know, veggies and fruits are great.
Yes.
But I think if a child cannot tolerate that, they're not eating that, how can we find other things that
A replacement.
yes, that can provide those vitamins, the fiber.
Fiber.
Yeah. Will they take a smoothie? So how can we kind of think outside of the box and not focus so much on they have to eat these things? Yeah.
Yes.
What are some most common nutrition or feeding challenges you see among children with autism?
Yeah, so kids with autism, I would say a lot of the sensory needs would be a real challenge. So it's not just the food, it's not just the texture of the food or the smell of the food, but it could be the lights in the room that they're eating. It could be the sounds that they're hearing that are causing them to feel really dysregulated and their body's stressed. And when their body's stressed, you know, you don't feel hungry, right? So there's so many different things when it comes to like sensory processing that can impact eating.
That explains a lot, and I can relate very well to this. I mean, for the first 2 3 years, 2 to 3 years ago, I noticed that if we go to normal restaurant or food shop, my son wouldn't want to eat there. Then he will definitely eat when we go to high-end restaurant, which is the ambience is a lot better, and maybe have background music that is soft, not noisy one, and he can eat that.
Yeah.
So it's like dinner when we want to go out with him, we have to go to places that require us to spend a bit more, 30 ringgit, 40 ringgit, that kind of places. But he eats and we happily goes to there.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy also the food.
Lucky
But-
boy.
But as he grow up older, now he can eat in normal coffee shop. Yeah, he can do that. He can eat. So these are the growth that I see.
Yeah.
And the wallet also feel better now.
So Janice, maybe you can share with us some experience or some case, you know, that you have worked with, that quite typical, you know, suitable for our audience. Maybe some example that how to journey with the child.
Yeah. You know, we have, let's see. We have a lot of different cases. I think sometimes it's that oral motor skill or that sensory input in their mouth. So some kids, they don't have the oral motor skills to be able to chew properly. And so the food in their mouth, maybe they have a hard time moving it around. And so they tend to prefer certain textures over others. Sometimes they need a lot more sensory input, so that crunchy food in their mouth, that feeling as opposed to the blended food feels better because they know how to manipulate it in their mouth. And so giving them that type of texture will help them to kind of map out their mouth, kind of know what the inside of the mouth looks like, how to move food around, and then also working on, you know, the strength and the movement of the tongue and the jaw can help with that as well. But we have to go at their pace, right? So if they're not ready to progress, you don't want to force them to do these exercises that feel uncomfortable. We have to kind of take it at their own pace. Yeah.
And why my son likes to eat those chips, snacks, all these things, and he don't like to eat things that are soft in texture.
Yeah.
So porridge he has never eaten it after he passed 1 year old. The one called what? Yeah. So and he always look for things to bite.
Yes. Yeah.
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 No wonder he always eat any chicken with bones. Is
He
touch
likes to
wood, touch
chew
wood.
on it.
It's a sure win when we give
Yeah.
him that drumstick and chicken wing.
Yeah.
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 And I also have seen kids who are the other way around, who
opposite.
only relies on liquid or blends for a very long time until they grown up. But physically, they looks okay. I have experience working with it. He looked okay, like in terms of weight and height, he's still growing, but he has never been eating any solid before.
Yeah.
So for kids like that, who they would also need to be on a nutritionist, like go on the nutrition
Yeah.
assessment and still working on.
Yeah, we have to really be able to see each individual uniquely and not have these unrealistic expectations for them. Some kids may, I think it's not as common here, but they may need a peg tube and be fed with formula, which can meet all their nutritional requirements. And that will give them the time that it takes for them to learn, to enjoy, putting food into their mouth. And that might be a temporary thing, but sometimes it's better for them to get that nutrition and not worry about how can we get it all through their mouth when that feels really hard for them. So sometimes that ends up being the case for
So
some
that can be a
kids.
temporary.
It can be a temporary thing,
okay.
yeah. So when they're able to progress, then
Can be removed.
that can be removed. Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought it's like a.
A forever. No, it's not
yeah.
it's not a forever thing. So I think a lot of times parents are very scared of that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it is, I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But it can be very helpful for some kids who have like a severe oral aversion.
So does it also are they also belong to like a picky eater, like in your point of view? Or how, like, picky eater has been a very common term. I've seen parents and many of them, oh, my kids are very picky when picking on some things. But what does it really mean from a dietitian perspective?
Yeah, so I think that we're all picky eaters.
Yeah, I would say I'm a very picky eater.
I think the difference is we've had decades to get used to the food that we eat. Our kids have like 2, 3, 4, 5 years to like explore all these different foods, and they don't have all those exposures that we've had. And I think about, so I grew up in LA and we lived in New York for a while. Those places have a lot of different ethnic foods, but when our family moved to Malaysia, it's still different. It's still different. Our friends that welcomed us to Malaysia on our very first night welcomed us with durian. We were not used to durian. We ate it and it was okay. We had leftovers and we decided to put it on the balcony for the night. But over time, 3 out of 5 of us are able to eat and enjoy durian. So it just takes time for us to get used to different foods. And for kids, they just haven't had
Enough time.
so much time, and so many exposures. Because especially for picky eaters, when they're picky, parents may serve them only the food that they like to eat. Because why would you serve them something that you know that they're not going to eat? So they need some time.
Will the attempt to consistently offer them something we know most likely they won't accept be like annoying or something you would
Probably.
discourage parents to try?
Yes, annoying. I'll be honest, it's annoying. It's hard because then you feel like you're wasting food. I think that it's a good idea to offer them, like instead of just giving them one dish because you know they're going to eat it, offer them a plate with, maybe like 1 spoon of something, 1 spoon, so you don't waste everything, just so that they can see it. And, they can see it. If they want to touch it, they can touch it, they can smell it, just so that they have that exposure. But we don't have to have that expectation that they have to try it if they don't want to.
Like the banana leaf rice, one.
Yeah.
If you want, then you can top up.
Exactly.
If you. Okay, we have been talking a lot about picky eater, and we also definitely have experience of how the children that tends to overeat, like they will never full, they will
Never stop.
eat, never stop, maybe 8 meals a day, and they're still looking for more food. So maybe you can hear from Janice what's your thought about that.
Yeah, first, I think we need to do a proper assessment and see, are they overeating, or do they have a really high metabolism, or are they in bodies that are just different, different shape, different size? So are they really overeating? And if they are, then what is underneath that surface? Why are they overeating? Is it boredom? Is it stress? Is it a way to connect with someone? Is it that they don't feel that
Are
fullness?
they too free?
Too free?
Nothing
too
to
free.
do.
Yes. No
So
routine,
that's
lack of routine.
Yeah, the only thing they can
And
keep
so it
themselves busy
becomes
with,
something to just keep them busy.
That's the hobby. Eating is the hobby.
My son maybe like that. When he's too free, he will just go to the kitchen and look for, because it's so obvious for him, like a menu. I want this, then
So then how can we address that?
Yeah.
Maybe more activities.
more activities, and also don't make the food choices so obvious to him. We hide things that we know is not good for him because maybe it's too sweet,
Yeah.
high sugar content. So try to hide it. So it's like treasure hunt for him also, because over time he might observe where we take it out from. Then the next time he will know.
Yeah, I think that addressing overeating and picky eating is also very similar. We kind of want them both to tune in to their own body, to feel, am I hungry, am I full, to notice that. And so it would be a very similar way to address that, letting them choose how much they want to eat, when they need to stop. So very similar in that way. And I think one thing is that shaming them is not going to work. It's probably going to have the opposite effect. They may binge, they may steal, hide foods because they know that, oh, I don't feel like I can have this. And so shaming them, maybe sometimes that might end up having the opposite effect. So I think we can be more careful about that.
I think the right support to get a better diagnosis on what is the cause, the reason of overeating. Okay.
I'm just curious, right? When we want to know do assessment about their nutrition, does it have to be like a medical procedure to know that what's the nutrition or you have a deficiency in certain? But then it's not really what it's. So you have to work in probably you get a medical assessment and then bring that assessment to you, and then you would.
Yeah, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It's helpful, to get the blood work done, so you know different levels, and but also I think we can do a lot with what are they eating throughout the day, looking at all those different aspects, looking at their growth trends over time. I think that's very helpful.
So that's why you need to have an interview, like just now you mentioned. The information from the parents would help you to determine what is the next step.
Yes.
Not just the medical report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Janice, can we take a few steps back to earlier, right? When you say shaming them is not helpful, I was just wondering, because parents might not aware that what we say is equivalent to shaming the child. Is there any example that you can help the listeners to know more that, oh, maybe this thing that I do, which I thought is the right thing to do, is actually considering as shaming the child, which is not helpful?
I think this can be cultural too. Sometimes just saying, "Oh, you had enough to eat already." You hear that, you look so fat, whatever.
You're so chubby.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, I think. And kids are smart. They pick up on these things, even if you're not saying it directly. So, yeah, I think that's really tricky. Just, let them grow into their body the way the way that they are. Yeah.
More to discourage them from eating junk food by saying that your tummy is so big already, something like that, right? I was almost doing this yesterday, but just yesterday night.
That's okay.
I noticed that my son's tummy has grown up from 2-3 months ago. Maybe it's more obvious, like a mini ball shape. So I wanted to ask my wife, but he's nearby us. So I just said my tummy. I tell my wife, do you think my tummy? But I was pointing at him. Then he didn't know we were talking about him, hopefully lah, I think. Because I keep saying that it's my tummy, but my wife aware that I'm pointing there. So she said, yeah, your tummy is bigger. So that's how we felt.
You know, it's hard because, you know, as adults, we all have our own insecurities, maybe our own history with food. And when we see our kids potentially experiencing that, it can be hard. And so sometimes it takes some self-reflection. We just want to be careful because there is a lot of like eating disorders, which is different from feeding disorders. Among, you know, girls is so common, but also among boys as well. When they have that insecurity about their body, it can be really challenging. Yeah.
So, how can parents introduce more structure to meal times? Just now, when you start with a very interesting, when Janice sharing that, you know, meal time should be everybody together and you
Calm.
feel calm, you feel
Enjoyable.
enjoyable. I'm like, wow, that's so far away from a lot of our kids. Mealtime, and even sometimes us is like on the phone, you know, we are rushing and all these things. So maybe you can share some tips that maybe we cannot achieve the 100%, but we can achieve like say 50-60%, you know, so slowly improve to a very calm mealtime together without creating too much pressure and stress for eating.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for kids, families who have kids with different challenges and needs, that 100% can look different for every family. So we kind of have to adjust that first. But one thing that I would recommend is something called the division of responsibility. This is something that we've learned about for a long time. And this is where parents can provide that structure and that balance of structure and nurture. So parents are responsible for deciding, or caregivers are responsible for deciding what they're going to offer the child, when is mealtime, and where is mealtime. And then the child can decide how much they want to eat and whether they want to eat. So maybe they're not hungry at all, they're not going to eat, and we're going to let them make that choice. This is a very simple concept, but in practice, it takes a lot of discernment, especially when you have a kid with feeding challenges. And so when I started doing this in my home, it was really challenging. But what I didn't realize was when I think about what I'm going to serve the kid, we have to think about what the child is capable of. If they're not capable of eating certain textures or certain smells, I'm going to make sure that there's at least one
Backup.
Yeah, at least one thing that they can eat and that they feel comfortable eating. Same with where they eat. Is the environment suitable for them? So the sounds, the lights, the seating, is that going to support them so that they can eat well? That postural support is very important for some of our kids. And then also timing. When is mealtime? You know, are
With
they
a good routine?
Yes,
right?
a good
Yeah.
routine. And sometimes that schedule needs to be adjusted. So being very in tune with that is going to help. And then allowing them to decline, allowing them the freedom to say, oh, I'm not hungry, I don't want this, or I don't want this, then I'm not going to eat. And that's okay. They will have another opportunity to eat later on. Yeah. So it gives a little, both that structure, so we're not just getting them whatever they want whenever they want. They're not just like roaming around the house eating whatever they want. But also it gives them a little bit of that autonomy to decide, am I hungry or am I not? Do I want to eat this or do I not?
They need to be part of the decision making to encourage them to, you know, feel like they are in control in their life to a certain extent.
And in this situation, I can see that parents play a very important role
Yeah.
in regulating themselves, setting the right expectation.
Correct.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we have not doing any changes in the child at the moment, but it's more on
Our
parents.
behaviors,
Yeah,
parents'
parents'
behaviors.
expectation, parents' behavior, parents' self-regulation.
Yeah.
That actually make it calm and peaceful.
I think it begins with parents having the awareness where the child, if they decline the food often now, does not mean that they don't like the food. It can be they're really not hungry yet. Just like we ourselves, right? Now is not even 11. If you ask me to eat heavy food, I will say I'm still full, but children who are on the autism spectrum, they may not be able to deliver the speech to say I'm still full. So what we learn over these 1-2 year is we ask our son, do you mean later? He understand the concept of later. So when he say later, we know, okay, this food don't need to throw yet, keep later. So maybe 20 minutes later, he will really come over and he's ready to eat. Yeah, so it's the awareness I think is very important for us to have.
I actually thought of something maybe our listeners would also be very interested to know. Like nowadays, when I go out, restaurants or coffee shop or cafes, it's so common to see when kids will only eat when iPad is presented. So I even hear from one of my friends who said he wouldn't eat until I bring it out. So then because we are worried that he's not eating, so I will just turn it on, the videos, and just feed him while he's eating. He doesn't even know like what is putting inside his mouth to that extent. What's your perspective or any views from about concerns like that? Yeah.
I think if we can avoid it, that would be the best, right? We want the child to be engaged in eating, to experience how food tastes, and to be aware of it. It's totally understandable when parents do this because this is like the only way they're going to get their kid to eat, especially when you're eating out and the environment is more challenging. So it really is, I mean, I would say it's a little bit case by case. Some kids need that to be regulated in an environment that feels overwhelming for them. But we can also take small steps to kind of move towards not using it all the time.
Gradually decrease that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe replace it with something else.
What we do with my son is that we allow him the iPad because it's important for that to let him agree to start so it's like part of the ritual. But eventually we will encourage him that okay, 2 more minutes, and if he say okay, then it's very safe already. So 2 minutes later, either we remind him that we need to remove it, or actually now he will just shove it away. So it's just like an appetizer to him. That it's the iPad. It's the feeding the mind first with the iPad. Then when he's really into eating already, the iPad becomes an obstacle for between him and the plate. He will actually shove it away. So that's the thing that it doesn't happen overnight, but it takes a lot of patience for the parents and maybe also determination to really set the ground rules over time, but don't jump straight to eliminating the iPad totally.
And it's very, very individual for every family.
Yes. Because I think the struggle is we know, people say screen time is bad, but I need him to eat. So it's like, which one is the lesser of the two devils? We have to be really very intelligently choose how to proceed first.
Right, Janice. Oh, we are also curious about food jagging, like a situation when a child who used to like to eat something but just suddenly stop eating a food that they have been eating for years or maybe for months. Have you got experience working with clients like that?
Yes, yeah. And I think when that happens, we continue to offer them a variety because you never know when they will come back to it. Sometimes when children suddenly stop eating something that they used to like, you want to pay attention. So if it lasts for a long time, that's another clue for us to be curious and to look under the surface. What has happened maybe in those past couple weeks? Was there a stressful move, transition, new school? All these things can really impact their eating. We did have a child who had experienced some sexual abuse. And it impacted the way that child was eating. The foods that they normally ate didn't want anymore. And the thing is, we don't always have this information. When these things happen, kids don't always tell their parents. They don't, therapists don't always know. But when these things happen, it's a clue for us to really think why. And even if you don't know the why, you know that there's something that's, leading to it. And so then we don't focus on forcing them to eat something that's not comfortable. So it's just a reminder that all behavior is communication. All behavior is telling us there's something else going on.
While finding out what is the core issue of it, we still can offer that choice there and see whether this child will one day decided to pick it up again and to take it again.
Yeah, and we can offer, but just not force them to eat it. You have to finish this before you can go play. I wouldn't do that.
It sounds like making it available.
Yeah.
You can have it.
Yeah.
But optional. Yeah. Okay.
When the child is not eating, the first person to be concerned definitely is not the child, because they are not aware of the importance of eating. Parents will be very stressful, and to a certain extent, we just want the best for them. But a lot of things, not just eating, can be sleeping, can be many other things. Parents will, because of the urge we have for them to be good, right? We may not slow down to understand them. We did another episode on sleeping a couple of weeks ago. So I received comments from a listener or audience say that after watching this episode, now I understand that I need to be more patient with my child, because every time the child is not sleeping, we thought that, this challenging behavior is the child being challenging. But actually, there are many reasons underneath. And I hope that just the listeners will actually get some insights from what you share, is that this only the behavior. We need to go down to investigate and be curious. And I think this is very important, because as a parents, we don't want to just check the boxes of doing the behavior, but we just want to connect with our child. And that means you really understand why they behave in a certain way. And I really appreciate your sharing, Janice. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will also benefit a lot, because we at least eat 3 times a day. So if you have challenge one in breakfast, you have 3 challenges throughout a day. And it's also one of the toughest thing to juggle for a balance. For ourselves, we have to think, oh, Monday we order this for lunch, and then he only eat this Saturday, so we have to skip because we don't want to be too frequent, later reject again. So I only hope that more people are aware that, registered dietitian like you, who understand children who's on the spectrum, then we can really seek for the proper help, other than, instead of getting information that maybe is not evidence based, not scientifically backed up from variety of social media, which may or may not solve or help with the load at all. Yeah. So before we end, do you have any other key last message that you would like listeners to know or be aware of or be mindful about?
Yeah, I think, I'm just very blessed to be able to do this work. I worked as a dietitian for about 10 years before I became a mom. And when I became a mom, my oldest son, we adopted him when he was 2 years old. And he was a very picky eater. So feeding and mealtimes were just such a challenge for us. And it wasn't until I started learning about these feeding disorders that I started to realize, actually, it's not because I'm a bad mom. It's not because he's a bad kid, but we're dealing with a challenge that's different from what other families have to deal with. And so I think that gives us a lot more freedom and grace and just understanding. And sometimes really parents, we can do all the right things, but still not get the outcome that we hope for. And I really feel like that's when I have to remind myself that these are the things that I have to leave into the hands of the divine, a God who loves my child and my family and who is capable of taking care of us. And so that's really what my husband Daniel and I are really passionate about, supporting families, because we know how hard it is, how frustrating it is sometimes. And we know that you can know all the right things to do, but it's still hard to do it, right? Like you might not have the capacity to do that. You might get frustrated at mealtimes, right? We know that. We don't do it perfectly all the time. But I think that the important thing is that families and parents are supported in a way that, when you have a really bad day, when you have a really bad meal and you lose your temper, you can start over. You can repair and start over and know that you're not a horrible mom or you're not a horrible dad. You're a human. I think that is the important message for all families.
Just to wrap it up, I understand that when our child has eating challenges or picky eating issue, so called, it might be challenging for the parents to even think about going out with friends because we are at risk of, having a drama outside or whatnot. And especially going for a trip is a lot question mark. And if let's say we suspect or we really going through a lot of the signal or red flags that your child needs additional support. So just hopefully this episode can be a first step for the additional support. But if you do really need extra help, maybe you can we will put Jenny's contact and whatnot in the show note. If you really need help, maybe you can consider to reach out. Or there are also many other dietitians out there. So just that have the awareness that the child is not the problem, the parent is not the problem, is the understanding what is the problem is the real thing that we need to do. Okay. So thank you very much, Janice, once again. And with that, we are signing off. Bye bye.